Well, I trust that you're doing well this Thursday afternoon. Time now to take a look at what's happening in the world of business on Inside Business. And in August, CMA issued the first green bond, and today that bond has been closed, raising about 4.3 billion shillings out of the 2 billion shillings that had been projected. We have that story and many more coming up, but first, we take a look at the highlights. Now, shilling a farm amid steady dollar supply. Small-scale tea farmers are put to protest low prices. Now, NEMA cracks grip on companies flaunting environmental regulations. Welcome to the program. My name is Njenga. Now, the shilling was steady against the dollar Thursday on the back of the even greenback demand while supply. The signs of tightening liquidity following a sustained regulator mop-up also offered support. Commercial banks quoted the local currency at an average of 103.89 in the morning. Interbank trading little changed from Wednesday closing average of 103.90. The shilling is also coming off the end-month period when dollar demand is usually amplified by importers looking to settle overseas obligations. The CBK has also seen a mopping up large amounts in excess liquidity from the markets in recent days, which has helped keep volatility low. Now, the first ever green bond issued in Kenya has raised over 4.3 billion shillings, despite its target of only 2 billion shillings out of the 5 billion shillings floated. Now, the paper, however, attracted institutional investors in pension schemes, banks, among others. Jimmy Mbogo has the details.
Well, indeed, thank you very much, and a very good afternoon to you too, Carol, from studio. Yes, today we are discussing matters green financing and the first bond that was issued in the East African region, that is by Akon Holding, that raised about 4.3 billion shillings within its issuance. Now, the target, according to the Akon CEO, they were targeting at least 2 billion shillings, and they actually surpassed this. Remember, there has been a lot of conversation about how do we ensure that we safeguard the environment by investing in issues such as the green bond, just to be able to make sure that even as we do investments in a responsible way, also keeping in mind that the effects of that is the environment degradation. And just to speak to us about some of the challenges and what this actually portends for to other investors in the region, I'm joined by Akon CEO, that is Mr. Kirathi. Thank you so much for speaking to us. Maybe one of the things that you can start by telling us, how is the bond market in Kenya, and what are some of the challenges that you actually faced during your issuance?
Well, as I said in my speech, the bond market is quite bearish at the moment, and there have been a number of defaults in the market, and so the market has been, sentiment has been quite degraded. But so that was the biggest challenge, of course, overcoming market sentiment. But we are fortunate to have the right type of partners, people like Garantco, to support the bond.
All right, now from the prospects of your company, you're currently a real estate company, and one of the things that has been in making headlines recently is the issue of the Big Four agenda and the aspect of housing. How then do we make sure that even as we try and do the housing plans, because as you know, the Kenyan culture is whenever something wants to be built up, one of the things that has to happen is the clearance of if let's say there were trees, they have to be cleared out. How do you sort of make sure that even as we build, we don't just become an urban jungle?
Well, you're right. There is a huge shortage of housing, and most of the shortage is around young people. So obviously for students, there's a huge deficit. Obviously, Nairobi has to urbanize, but of course we take great care to make sure that the sites we are buying, they're not going to have, huge problem like of cutting a lot of trees and, degrading the environment. That's how come this is a green bond.
All right. In terms of the policies that have been set in place from you as an issuer, what are some of the things that can be done better to improve sentiments to investors?
Obviously, you need well-structured bonds to come to market. A lot of the bonds have not been very well-structured and supported in terms of collateral for bondholders. So they end up losing their money in case something goes wrong.
If we look in terms of the future prospects, who do we see investing more in bonds?
Well, I'm a real estate guy. I'm not in the capital markets, but obviously the biggest investors in bonds globally tend to be, pension funds, mutual funds, life insurance companies, banks, and that's what we saw even in our band. Those are the kind of people participating.
All right. Now, in terms of splits and percentages, who would you say invested most in the first issue?
I think there was a good mix, almost evenly spread between banks, insurance, pension funds, and DFIs. So there was a kind of a good mix. You can't say one group took most of the issue. It was actually it was quite a good mix.
All right. There's also, lastly, as we wind up, there's also the issue of tax exemption to all the green bonds that are going to be issued. How is this likely going to how is this going to turn out in the future and for the next group that are going to also issue green bonds in the Kenyan market?
So actually, tax benefits is one of the biggest reasons why investors and businesses like ourselves would go to the capital markets. And there are a lot of benefits in the capital markets from a tax perspective for both businesses like ourselves and investors. So obviously, this kind of thing will obviously encourage more people to invest in this kind of products because tax benefits is one of the biggest benefits when you come to the capital markets. Yeah.
And when do we expect you to sort of issue the next one?
I don't know. Yeah, we'll decide along the way. Yeah,
all right, indeed. All right, indeed. Thank you very much. And Carol, as you have heard it there's a perspective that there could be another issue in the future, but we also look forward to see how investors pick up this new opportunity and invest in bonds, and especially green bonds that help safeguard the environment. But for now, back to you.
Well, thank you, Jimmy Mbogo, for that update. He'll be compiling a comprehensive story during the 9 p.m. bulletin, so do look out for that story and more details concerning the first green bond. Now, the economy grew by 5.6% between April and June this year, which is slower than an expansion of 6.4% registered during a similar period last year. The Kenya National Bureau of Statistics say that even though the macro environment remained largely conducive for growth, April and June this year, which saw a number of sectors post impressive performances, the overall growth was curtailed by a slowdown in agriculture, manufacturing and transportation. This forms the basis of our discussion today, where we'll be focusing on looking at the economy and how it has been performing in the first half year and also in the second quarter between April and June. And in studio with me is David Gitao, who is an investment analyst at Titan. Welcome to our studios.
Thank you.
Well, we can start with what I've just said there. The economy grew by 5.6% when you compare with how it grew last year at 6.4%. What would you make out of this? Is this an alarming thing, and should Kenyans be worried out there?
Okay, we can't say it's an alarming thing. Like you mentioned, the main contributor to the decline in performance was the agricultural sector, which grew by around 4.6% from 6.4 last year. And the main reason was the delayed onset of the long rains. But if you look at some other sectors such as the financial services and insurance, they improved. But with the decline in the agricultural sector, it had a trickle-down effect also in the manufacturing sector, because the manufacturing sector is also based on mainly agricultural processing, things such as milk processing, etc.
Okay. The lower growth rate, as you've said, was because of a slowdown in agriculture and also manufacturing. Agriculture is the backbone of the economy. Now, when there's a slowdown in agriculture, what does this tell about this industry? And do we see it recovering anytime soon?
Okay, in the agricultural sector, we expect it to recover because we are past that period where we didn't have the long rains. But I can say right now the main concern we have is on the manufacturing sector, because under the Big Four agenda, the target for the manufacturing sector in terms of contribution to economy is supposed to be around 15%. But what we've seen with the numbers that have come out, it's around 9%. We haven't even reached 10%. So you can say the main concern that we have currently is on the manufacturing sector and not on the agricultural sector.
Okay. And you see manufacturing sector is supposed to create jobs. And we have seen recently the performance of companies, listed companies, is also affecting also other areas of the manufacturing sector. We can look at what has been happening actually. We've seen companies laying off, yeah? We've seen companies listed at the NSE not performing very well. Well, can we say now that the economy is in recession?
No, we can't say it is in recession because we still have positive economic growth as at now. It's only a few sectors, because like I've mentioned, even in the listed stocks, you might see that, like I've said, in the financial and insurance companies, such as the banking sector, they've been performing relatively well despite maybe the stringent rules and regulations. But the main concern, like I've mentioned, is just mainly manufacturing sector.
But there's a widespread drop in spending across all sectors. You would not say that we are not somewhere close, or even if we're not there yet, close to recession.
Okay, in terms of spending, one of the problems that we have in Kenya is that the economic growth is mainly driven by government spending. So if there isn't a lot of government spending, because like we've been seeing, the government is trying to, the fiscal consolidation, that is, they're trying to reduce the expenditure so that we can reduce the budget deficit going forward. So I think that has also contributed in terms of the money trickling down to the citizens.
Okay, let's move on now to inflation. We saw it drop to 3.8% from 5%, and the government, or KNBS, is attributing this to lower food prices. But then again, when you go to the supermarkets or you go to your nearby shop, the cost of unga is still up. Can Kenyans really feel this drop of inflation in their pockets?
Okay, in terms of inflation, when you're looking at the CPI, the one that has the highest weighting is in terms of now food and beverages index. But from the KNBS report that they released for the September inflation, they attributed the decline mainly in the vegetable prices, things such as tomatoes, cabbages. I will have to agree with you when you look at things such as the maize prices and flour prices. They have relatively gone up, though it was only by a marginal percentage. So the decline in the vegetables, because we are coming from now that period of the effects of the delayed onset of the long rains, we are coming out of that period. We saw there were higher declines in terms of maybe the vegetables and onion prices, tomato prices. But I must agree with you, when it comes to the flour prices,
you're still way behind.
We're still way behind.
Okay.
More has to be done.
Okay. Now coming to your area of expertise, which is the banking sector. And we saw a report that Saitom released saying that the listed banks have been performing not very well, poorly rather. You can maybe tell us why is the banking sector declining?
Okay, in terms of the performance of the banking sector, if you looked at our report, we had focused mainly on 4 themes. And one of the themes that is really affecting the performance of the banking sector is in terms of regulation. Because with the introduction of the Banking Amendment Act, we saw that lending rates were capped at 4% above the CBR. So with that, we've seen that banks have started readjusting in terms of their core business, because the core business of the banks is to collect deposits and give out and issue out loans. But currently, if you look at the performance in terms of loan growth, etc., you'll find that there has been a decline in terms of revenues collected from interest revenue, that is. So right now they are mainly readjusting on the non-funded income, things such as commissions.
Okay, fine. But what are the key drivers for maybe players in the banking sector? But we have mentioned, you themed your report on 4 key themes. Maybe you can mention them quickly as you tell us maybe the drivers of the players in the banking sector. Okay,
the 4 themes that we focused on, the first one was the one that I mentioned, regulation. And under regulation, we are looking at the issue with the interest rate cap. as well as the banking sector charter, which mainly is concerned on consumer protection right now. The second theme that we are looking at was revenue diversification, because like I mentioned, we've seen that banks are now looking mainly at their alternative channels, that is the non-funded income, things such as commissions and fee and commission, things such as bank insurance. And now the third one that we had was asset quality, because we've seen that asset quality has been deteriorating, that is in terms of the non-performing loans. So the asset of the loans in the banking sector has been declining, because like in half one, the NPL ratio came in at around 10% from around 9.8% in half one 2018. So those were mainly the key themes.
And now that asset quality has been deteriorating, indicating maybe what you've just indicated, the rise of gross non-performing loans, how are banks addressing this?
Okay, in terms of addressing the non-performing loans, we've seen banks now, they are starting to come up with systems, credit assessment systems, so that they can be able to relatively price loans adequately, so that they can lock out people who have high risks of default.
Okay, but do you still expect maybe banks to continue employing maybe prudent loan disbursements?
Definitely, but with the conversation that is currently around, because we've seen the conversation shifting from the repeal of the interest rate cap to maybe increasing the margin from 4% of CBR to 6% of the CBR. So maybe if there will be that readjustment, you might see more people accessing credit, as well as more growth in terms of the loans. Okay.
And the first quarter was characterized by consolidation activity, where we saw various banks actually emerge. We saw NIC and also other banks, CBA, merging. We saw other banks also. Maybe you can share with us, do we see the same thing in the second quarter?
Okay, from where we see it, we still see further consolidation, mainly because banks are trying to take advantage of the synergies. But also another thing that is driving the consolidation is many banks have a problem with the working capital requirements. That is the regulation that I talked about. So we still see that, we still expect smaller banks, the tier 3 banks, etc., to consolidate or maybe to merge with bigger banks, so that they can have adequate capital.
We're also seeing Equity is having conversations with the Commercial Bank of Congo, yes?
Yes.
And these are some of the things we're supposed to see, maybe expanding, maybe across the board.
Okay. Okay. When we look at banks such as Equity, it's still the same thing with the regulation, because we've seen that there's relatively stringent regulations in the country affecting the performance in terms of maybe the interest income. So we're seeing banks trying to look at other markets whereby there are less stringent regulations. Okay.
Coming back to the average loan growth, which came in at about 9.8%, and this is as compared to 3.8% recorded in 2018, that is the first half. Does this mean that there was an improvement in credit extension in the economy?
Okay, yes, there have been an improvement, because even from the figures that we had around August, private sector credit growth grew by around 6.3%. So, but what is driving the improvement in terms of loan growth is mainly because we've seen that there has been a readjustment in terms of the yield curve. That is, the government securities yields have relatively declined. So banks are now being forced to lend in as much as there's still that rate cap. So that is the main driver in terms of the loan growth.
Okay. We also saw government securities actually record also a slower growth of 12.1% compared to 14.9% in the first half of 2018. So does this show banks have begun maybe to adjust their businesses now? And maybe focus more on the private sector? Okay,
like I've just mentioned, the problem is the downward readjustment in the yield curve, because we've seen that it has also affected interest income, because in the Q1 2018, for example, half one 2018 last year, we saw there was relatively high growth in terms of government securities. But since then, the yields in the government securities have declined, so banks are now being forced to just lend so that they can be able to have those interest margins.
Okay, thank you so much for coming to our studios.
Okay, thanks.
Well, that has been David Gitao, who is an investment analyst at Citon, just breaking down for us what has been happening in various sectors, the agriculture, manufacturing, and also the banking sector. Now we move on to other stories making headlines in the world of business. And Equity unveiled a new identity in line with its journey of transformation and regional expansion during the 35 years celebration held yesterday at KICC, Equity Bank has promised that the new identity is aimed at creating sustainable growth path and service delivery.
It was all pomp and color as Equity Bank celebrated 35 years of continued support to the socio-economic development of Kenya and the region.
We look back at the journey we have come, we marvel at the goodness of our Lord and the support and confidence of our customers and partners.
Equity branches around the country today welcomed all its customers in style, promising all the stakeholders the delivery of great customer experience.
This exercise, we have done it as a promise, and that we are accountable to our customers every day. So for me, as a team leader of Nut House branch, is to just tell the customers of this branch and our environs, those who come from our environs, whether they come from all over the country, all over the regions that we have our presence, we promise very customer-centric and good customer service that actually takes care of their needs, takes care of their livelihoods.
According to Joseph Njenga, the branch manager at Equity Nut House, the bank has also installed new state-of-the-art ATMs that will deliver faster service and reduce the time spent on ATMs.
And we are promising you that the next 35 years will be another milestone of solutions that are geared towards our customer needs.
Going forward, Equity will present itself as a unified brand with one basket of products and services under one roof, ranging from banking to insurance and investment.
Our aim is the test that we put in whichever business we want to partner with is a test of solving people's problem and sustainability. And that's why we have started even education arm for customers.
Equity Bank now has extensive regional footprint with branches in Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, South Sudan, Rwanda, Congo, Zambia, Mozambique, and Ethiopia. In pursuit of the bank purpose of changing lives and transforming communities, Equity is aiming at opening more banks in other countries in Africa. Kimani Githuku, K24 TV.
Now, tea farmers from Kirinyaga County have begun uprooting the crop over this year's low returns. However, the area county administration is now pleading with the farmers to stop the exercise and give the county government a chance to talk with the national government on the way to increase their payout. The current price are reported to be the lowest Kenya Tea Development Agency, KTDA, has fetched in 10 years. Linda Koskei with that report.
The tea bonus announced recently by the Kenya Tea Development Agency KTDA shocked tea farmers across the country when they received a 30% drop in this year's earnings. Farmers have now threatened to venture into other agricultural activities that will yield better returns. However, according to Kirinyaga Deputy Governor Peter Ndambiri, the ongoing uprooting of the tea bushes is an economic sabotage and farmers should not be quick to destroy the produce. The DG is now pointing an accusing finger on the Cabinet Secretary for Trade, Peter Munya, for failing to address challenges that are faced by both coffee and tea farmers. The tea crisis has been attributed to a shift in the global market, especially when Pakistan devalued its currency after a trade row with neighboring India, while Sudan's economy suffered badly after the military overthrew long-serving leader Omar al-Bashir in April last year, resulting in political instability. Linda Koskei, K24, Inside Business.
Now, Tourism Cabinet Secretary Najib Balala has expressed confidence of a 10% growth in international arrivals this year, buoyed by a strong performance in the second half of the year. During the official opening of the 9th Magical Kenya Travel Expo, Balala said the industry has shown positive growth in the second half after suffering a slight drop in the first half of 2019. Let's listen in.
The presence of over 130 buyers today is a positive indication of their readiness to sell the destination to all the visitors within their networks. It affirms that Kenya is a country many others eager to visit. To sustain our growth in the tourism sector, the government has refocused its efforts on areas of safety and security, infrastructure improvement, incentives, as well as sustained campaigns on source markets to increase destination awareness. According to the latest World Bank annual ratings, Kenya has moved 19 places, up from 80 in 2017 to 61 in 2018. Countries that rank better in these reports attract investors and appeal more as potentially great foreign direct investment that the country can host. Cruise tourism is growing globally, and Kenya wants to tap into this segment. Kenya is almost completing the construction of the cruise terminal in Mombasa. The government has invested there and now is going to be ready by end of this year. It is set to open major businesses in the country, and Kenya will be competing with the rest of the cruise business.
Now, the National Environmental Management Authority, NEMA, has closed down a steel-making plant in Njenga town and arrested 3 supervisors for flouting environmental regulations. The company is said to have switched off their machines upon realizing that they had been cornered, but they did not deter NEMA officers from cracking the whip. Linda Koskei with that report.
The National Environmental Management Authority, NEMA, has shut down a steel-making company for failing to comply with regulations on waste discharge. The authority forced their entry into the company after the management denied them access. By the time NEMA officers arrived at the company, the whole area was enveloped by a dark smoke and foul smell emanating from the factory. NEMA Head of Inspectorate Sheni Koyet said locals have been complaining of the smoke and foul smell endangering their lives.
Noticed some of the issues that were there in their furnace, and they told them to know how to rectify so that their staff could work efficiently. But unfortunately, they never did that. And after that, they had changed their tactics and they started operating at night.
The company, though licensed, is in the middle of a residential area.
The smoke that is coming from here, because it is not passing through the right channel, therefore it is causing it may cause a lot of health problems.
The company was closed indefinitely until the owner complies with NEMA regulations. Linda Koskei, K24 Inside Business.
Now, the National Government Affirmative Action Fund program is targeting the most vulnerable people in marginalized pastoral areas to engage them in business and development in a bid to empower them economically. Now, the Chief Executive Officer, Titus Lotte, said they are engaging youth, women and the disabled to improve their living conditions through economic activities. Sarah Adam brings us that report.
Pastoralists in marginalized areas are set to be empowered economically by the National Government Affirmative Action Fund in a bid to sustain their livelihood. Speaking at Kodik area in West Pokot County while meeting with women, Loti said the funds seek to address the plight of vulnerable groups through enhanced access to financial resources for socio-economic empowerment among women, youths, needy children and the elderly.
Sana sana kuinua biashara za mifugo kama vile biashara za mbuzi, kama zile biashara za maziwa, kama vile biashara za kuku na biashara za ng'ombe. Na tunaona kwamba vijana wanashikilia biashara hizi kwa haraka sana.
He said the program has prioritized agriculture and education to ensure that areas that were left behind in development become like the rest.
Zetu sana sana ni vitu vya kilimo kama vile mifugo, kuinua mifugo kutoka vile mifugo ya chini kwenda kuwa mifugo za juu, kuinua mashamba zetu haswa zile ambazo tunaziita kitchen garden, na kuinua biashara za wamama ambazo sana inazunguka kulingana na kuinua uchumi.
The CEO called on youth and women in the country to take advantage of the funds to improve their livelihood. He said the program is building sustainable livelihood for women and offering girls an opportunity to access basic education from disadvantaged homes in the country. Sarah Adam, K24 for Inside Business.
Well, now it's time to take a look at how the shares have been performing at the NSE market for the better part of the morning, where we'll look at the top gainers and the top losers. Where top gainers, CIC Insurance, market share price was 3.31, a percentage change of 8.17. Olympia was the second, 2.110 market price share, that is 4.43 percentage change. Kayan General was 24 shillings market price share, and the positive for 35. Now to the top losers, we have EFTCC, 17.50 market share price, that is negative 5.41. Total 29 shillings market share price, that is negative 3.17, and Kabadis was 7.78 market share price, that is negative 2.75. Now we'll look at how the foreign exchange has been for the better part of the morning, where we will look at the US dollar as well as other currencies, and we'll see that the currency has been performing or has been stable as of today, and also last night where it closed at 173 or 103 rather 0.75 and 103.95, that is selling. Now we look at we'll jump to the Uganda shillings, where it was buying at 35.36 and 35.52 selling. And that is how we wrap up Inside Business for tonight, for today rather. My name is Njenga. Have a great afternoon.